Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Luffy ate lottery devil fruit part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support the EVELSAINT93 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story link in the description. Let's start this video. Young boy held a dagger up, teeth grit together with determination. No one panicked at the sight of a young boy perched precariously on the rails of a swaying ship. I will be the one to conquer the sea. I will be greater than even the pirate king. The crowd that gathered laughed in response. One of them spoke up. Boy. What are you up to now, Luffy? Monkey D. Luffy waved his dagger around. I'm going to show you all how tough I can be. Then you'll take me along for your voyage. Then he promptly stabbed himself right below the eye. You idiot. The entire crew screamed. They were now in a tavern. That didn't hurt at all, Luffy said, eyes watering. Everyone could tell that Luffy was barely holding back the pain. Stabbing a knife right below your eye might do that. Not only would there be a flesh wound, but the feeling of knife scraping bone hurt like Dickens. Red-haired Shanks flicked Luffy on the forehead. I'm still not taking you along with us. The sea is not a place for a kid to be. Besides, what do you know about being a pirate anyway? Luffy's eyes lit up with excitement. But as a pirate, you can find treasures and see the mysteries of the sea. Also, you can do whatever you want. Why not be a pirate? Shanks shoveled the fried rice into his mouth at a ferocious rate. Marines get to sail the seas too. Why not join the Marines? Luffy scrunched up his face. Marines have to follow the rules and all that stuff. I don't want to turn out like Gramps. Shanks thought about it for a moment. Well, if you can swim 10 laps around my ship, I'll think about it. No problem, I've been learning how to swim for quite a while now. 10 laps is easy stuff. Also, my punch is like a pistol. He pumped his arm out in enthusiasm, pretending he was knocking out one of the 7 warlords. Shanks flicked some leftover peas at Luffy. Oh really? He pointed at Shanks and made an indignant face. You're just jerking my chain, aren't you? A strong voice spoke out. The captain is just trying to look out for everybody. He knows fully how dangerous the sea could be. It can kill you in 1,000 ways, you know. Luffy turned to the man who was lighting his cigar. Oh. Mr. First mate. I can swim though. Then Beckman took a drag. Can you kill? He murmured quietly. Luffy froze. Kill. The first mate looked past Luffy with tired eyes. Sometimes to protect your nakama and those who are precious to you, one cannot avoid killing. But why can't I just beat them up? That works too, right? Luffy stammered. There was no answer to that question. The doors to the tavern slammed open, the room became silent at the sudden intrusion. The tall lanky thug swaggered in, followed by a group of men. Mountain bandits. Luffy shrugged and turned back to his food. Pirates were more badass than bandits. To his dismay, his plate was already empty. Shanks must have swiped his steak when he turned around. In turn, Luffy took a peek at Shanks' plate, it was also empty. However, next to Shanks was a small chest. Treasure. While the mountain bandit Higuma, whatever his face, caused a ruckus, Luffy opened the chest and found a fruit. It was a violet-purple fruit with swirls. Some of the swirls curved to form question marks which patterned the fruit. Ignoring the obviously strange appearance, Luffy chomped down on it anyway. It could be an exotic fruit from somewhere. Luffy was never the one to pass eating new food. It felt like a bomb went off in his head. There were images of fruits flashing rapidly in his head. All of them an odd shade of purple, decorated by weird swirls like the one he just ate. There were hundreds of fruits flashing before his eyes. There was a building pressure behind his skull. Was this mystery fruit a poison fruit? Was he going to die? He panicked. No. Not before he could become the king of pirates and rule over the sea. As if influenced by his resolve, the fruit slowly cycled until it stopped on one odd fruit. This fruit was different. It was deep blue like the ocean, the swirls gently shaped to imitate churning waves. The fruit started glowing, washing over him in blue light and then darkness. Shanks picked himself up from the ground, his crew laughing at his misfortune. The mountain bandits had left after getting bored of picking on him. If he could, he would rather avoid showing the darker aspect of piracy to Luffy and the town. After the mockery, he thought Luffy would have spoke up. It was oddly quiet. Kicking aside the broken glass, Shanks turned to Luffy. Shanks felt his stomach plummet when he saw the empty chest. It couldn't be. Luffy was slumped across the table, a half-eaten devil fruit next to him, where it fell from his slack grip. Shanks grabbed him and shook him roughly. Luffy. Wake up. Please don't tell me you ate that fruit. It tastes really bad, and then my head started hurting funny. Luffy mumbled from the counter. You idiot. That was the lottery fruit. It's one of the secret treasures of the sea. After you eat it, you'll get a random devil fruit power, but you'll never swim again. Luffy sat up straight with eyes popping. What? He howled. Shanks smacked him over the head. You idiot. Is it this one? Shanks pointed at the picture of the Gumo Gumo fruit. Luffy sighed. No. This one? The Yami Yami fruit? No. This one? The Mara Mara fruit? Nope. Shanks closed the encyclopedia of devil fruits. What you ate was the lottery fruit. Basically the fruit acts as a lottery and chooses a fruit for you. It gives you the power of a random fruit that no one has yet. So if someone ate the Mara Mara fruit, that lottery will skip over that fruit. Luffy picked his nose. So what? Shanks smacked him over the head. So that means that you've got the powers of an unknown fruit. This encyclopedia only has records of known devil fruits. It could be possible that it's a totally new fruit or just uncommon. He cracked a wide smile. Cool. I got a new power that no one has. Well, your powers will develop sooner or later. Just be sure to get a grip on it. You wouldn't want your powers going out of control, would you? Take that back. Shanks isn't a coward. The Guma the bear, with a 8 million berry bounty on his head, pinned the struggling boy under his foot. That sea swagger captain was a joke. I'll let you off if you say pirates are cowardly fools. Bandits eat cow dung. The Guma's face twisted into an ugly sneer. Brats like you don't deserve to live. I've killed 56 people who pissed me off, and now you're going to be number 57. He lifted his foot up, brought it straight down to crush Luffy's skull to a pulp. Luffy threw out his hands and scrunched his eyes close. Right before Higuma could make contact with Luffy's head, his foot made contact with something hard that was definitely not bone. When foot meets metal, there's only one thing to do. $% number K. An obsidian black shield materialized out of thin air into Luffy's hands. It wasn't a run-off-the-mill type of shield. The black surface showed no scratches or wear. In the center was a wide blue circle the size of a palm. Luffy stared at the shield in his hand in amazement. The blue center of the shield reflected light like smooth glass, yet it swirled as if the ocean were straining at him behind a glass barrier. The shield itself was an octagon, shaped by 8 sides. On the front portion were strange arcane symbols, but etched along the back of the black obsidian part were the letters. The Oda no Kagami, the 8-span mirror. The Guma raged over the pain in his foot. It felt like the force of his blow rebounded from the shield back to his foot. He sneered and pulled out his gun. Let's see if that fancy shield of yours could fight bullets. Luffy hunched himself into a small ball and took cover behind his shield just as the telltale sound of the pistol firing started. Behind the cover of his shield, Luffy frowned when nothing happened. There was no recoil from holding the shield. Did the bandit miss? On the other side, the bandit gaped at the shield. His aim was accurate. The 3 shots he had shot in succession had most definitely hit the shield. The only problem was, the moment it contacted the shield, the bullet stopped on its own accord and dropped to the ground. A chillingly cold voice interrupted the stunned silence. What's this? The moment I come back, I see some low-life bandit shooting my friend. Shanks and his crew were back and they were not happy. One of the mountain bandit lackey laughed and pointed his pistol at Shanks. You sad wimp, I'ma blow your head off right now if you take one step closer. Shanks pointed at the gun. It's not safe to point guns, you know. It means you're putting your life in danger. There was splat as the lackey's brain graced itself on the floor. Even Luffy seemed stunned by the gruesome display. Luckyroo had somehow advanced without anyone's notice and blasted the bandit's head off. This was all while he was chomping down on a piece of meat. That wasn't fair, you bastard. This time it was the first mate who spoke up. Fair? You aren't dealing with saints here. We're pirates. And we don't play by the rules. Then Beckman took one last drag and tilted his flintlock rifle, so he gripped it like a club. I got this, Captain, he said coolly. The enraged mountain bandits rushed at Beckman only to meet a sad fate. The first bandit blinked in surprise and then felt the sizzling pain of a lit cigarette burning its way into his right eye, effectively blinding his eye for life. The butt of the rifle that followed dropped him into blissful darkness. Beckman spared no mercy when it came to crippling the bandits. Broken kneecaps and smashed skulls were commonplace. If any of them escapes or survives, their life of banditry would be over. The fallen and broken bodies of his gang filled Higuma with awe and dread. He knew if he didn't leave soon, he would join them on the floor. Higuma found himself backtracking to justify himself. This brat started it. Let me go, please. Shanks shrugged. There's a price on your head. I think I'll buy me some grog with it. Fuck you all, he shouted and threw down a smoke bomb to obscure the crew's vision. He grabbed Luffy by the scruff of the neck and took off to the harbor. After the smoke screen cleared, Shanks fell into a panic at the sight of the missing Luffy. Beckman tapped Shanks on the shoulder. Knowing scums like him, there's only one place he would go. Luffy peered over at the side of the dinghy. He was a fairly good swimmer, but after eating the fruit, he was supposed to sink like a hammer in water. Higuma reared his leg back to give Luffy a good punt to the backside. Somehow he saw the image of the kick coming in his head and turned around just in time to block with his shield. $% number K. Higuma shouted as he hurt and felt his toes crunch. Luffy's laughter died when a giant shadow loomed over the boat. It was the local sea monster. It was a huge eel-like fish with mouth filled with foot-long teeth. Its gaping maw descended down upon them just as he felt himself being jerked away by the collar and flung away in the ocean. Through the spinning vertigo, he caught sight of Shanks looking at him in relief, just as he too was swallowed up by the sea monster. Luffy hit the water with a splash and fell about 5 feet down. Pushing his feet and scrabbling his hands, he tried swimming desperately to the surface. The odd thing was it worked. He swam his way back up to the surface only to see scraps of floating wood and the red dye of blood in the water. His mind froze. Shanks was dead. Dead. And it was his fault. He did it. That sea monster. Fault. Dead. Luffy's eyes narrowed into pinpoints as he glared at the sea monster and screamed in anguish and unrestrained anger. Shanks. The sea monster eyed the young boy, intending to feast on another morsel when the wave of utter dominance overtook its senses. His animal instincts were telling him to run and swim away because he was going to die. Under the strong burst of haki, the sea monster keeled over to the side and died. Its brain lacked the willpower or mental fortitude to fend off the crushing haki it felt. After the sea monster kicked the bucket, Shanks cut his way out of the overgrown eel's belly and swam frantically underwater to find Luffy. Shanks had banked on cutting his way out of the sea monster's belly and then diving to rescue Luffy, who would have sank down into the depths like a hammer. Oddly enough, he couldn't see Luffy's drowning body anywhere. He looked up and choked in surprise when he saw the familiar sight of a 7-year-old treading water. A 7-year-old who ate the devil's fruit. Gagging, he swam his way back up to the top. Luffy was bawling at the thought of Shanks' sacrifice. When he opened his eyes and saw waterlogged Shanks, covered in sea monster intestines and blood, he did the natural thing. He fainted dead away at the thought of Shanks' zombie coming back to life to haunt him. Shanks blinked and dragged the unconscious Luffy back to shore. The grilling would have to wait until he wakes up. Unnoticed by Shanks, the obsidian shield floated on the waves, floating innocuously behind Luffy, back to the shore. It was as Luffy would call it when he woke up. A mystery shield. Time is elusive. Has 10 years really gone by so quickly? 10 years ago, Shanks entrusted his straw hat to him, making a promise to meet up again. He became a great pirate. Ever since that day, he had been training until he coughed out blood, just for this moment. It's time to rule the seas. He yelled out, throwing both of his hands up in a banzai cheer. He set off under the cheers of his fellow villagers. Makino, and even the mayor was there to send him off. All he had at the moment was a small dinghy and a barrel of provisions, but it was a start. It was time to keep his promise to Ace, to Sabo. Here comes the future ruler of the seas. Straw Hat Luffy. Perched on his head was his greatest treasure, his pride and his promise. Luffy tilted his frayed straw hat, blocking the bountiful rays of sun. It was a good day to set out to sea. He had already waited 10 long years, Ace beat him by 3 years and sailed off earlier. The last he heard of him, he was captain of his own pirate crew, the Spade Pirates. Now it was his turn to form his own crew. About 10 people seemed right. He ticked off his fingers. Let's see him. We need a cook, a musician, another cook, another singer, a first mate cook. A dancer, He took a look at the giant whirlpool that was threatened to drag him and his small dinghy to the depths. Maybe I should add in a navigator too. Nah, another cook. To most people, a giant whirlpool would have sent them into a panic and even the calmest monk would break a sweat. However, Luffy wasn't concerned at all. And why? Because it was time for a nap. Crazy people have crazy luck. There were times when life play funny tricks on you. Koby liked to call it karma. It had to be. He must have done something horrible in his past life in order to warrant such a fate. How else would he have been cursed to become a cabin boy for the fattest and ugliest woman in the world? His sad story began 2 years ago when he jumped onto a ship to go fishing. Much to his horror, the ship belonged to Lady Alvida, the fairest throughout all the seas. Which brings us back to the present with Koby polishing her shoes. Lady Alvida can be described in 3 words. Crazy fat hoe. Crazy. Apparently, she had the notion that she had the perfect figure, her face devoid of pimples, and her skin flawless. In reality, she looked like a miniature killer whale with too many spots on her face. There was another reason why the word hoe had been added in. The crazy fat hoe carried around a frickin' huge iron mace. One wrong look, one wrong comment, one speck of dust on her ship, and say hello to Mr. Mace. Koby liked to believe that he had survived 2 years due to his cunning and fast-thinking brain, but the harsh truth was he was a coward who licked the dirt of her shoe if she asked. It was a day like any other for Koby. But wait. Could it be? Yes, it was. A floating barrel. Floating barrels are good, Koby learned that through experience. Usually most barrels that float signify that the container was sealed properly. Chances were, the barrel contained some provisions that were washed overboard, maybe some dried meat jerky or even sake. An Japanese alcoholic beverage made from rice. Sake and grog will have the same meaning. Alvida gave but the smallest of scraps to him, meaning it was enough to keep him alive, but his body was severely lacking in any proper protein and vitamins. The only reason why his teeth weren't falling out from scurvy like the rest of the crew was because he sold whatever he could find in the barrels and used that money to buy limes. Also, whenever Alvida attacked a merchant ship or any other sailing vessel, Koby would rush to find the kitchen so he could steal some food and get his intake of lime juice. Stealing treasure or money was too noticeable, and Alvida made no one looted anything besides her. Koby rolled the heavy barrel into the storage shack. It was pretty heavy. A snide voice spoke up. "Why, Koby, what have you got there? Is that a barrel of rum I've seen you found?" Koby gulped and turned to see the Three Stooges. They were the rough and ugly type, despicable cutthroat pirates. Rumor was, those three got the title of the Three Stooges by somehow, well, what word would describe the bravery and the amount of disgust it took to actually bang a mini killer whale? Koby flinched and drew back when they surrounded him. "Yo. Koby. You ain't seen nothing, right?" Their putrid breath washed over him. He sincerely hoped that their breath was naturally that bad and not the scent of Alvida's $. Koby barfed a little in the back of his throat at the thought. Weakly, he said, "I didn't see nothing." A double negative. Of course the dumb Neanderthals didn't catch it. Much to all of their surprise, the barrel lid sprang open and a young teen popped out. What a great nap. What the devil? While the Three Stooges wondered where the rum went, Koby was wondering how anyone could have survived being tossed around in the boundless ocean in an airtight container. Slacking off, you scurvy dogs. The telltale sign of a shrill banshee and the sound of a spinning club set off all four of their ingrained survival instincts. Out of habit more than anything, they all dropped to the floor, allowing the spinning club to smash the shacks into wooden debris and sent the new arrival rolling down the hill. Koby gathered his wits and ran after the barrel. It was safer that way. He raised his hands in the typical Luffy greeting. "My name's Luffy. Where am I?" Koby stuttered, not knowing what to make of the new arrival. "You're on an island Iron Mace Alvida uses as a hideout. I'm Koby, her cabin boy." Luffy nodded sagely. "I see, well, none of that matters to me." Koby didn't know what to say. The young teen before him was oddly dressed, a red vest and blue shorts that frayed at the knee. The straw hat on his head added to the country look, but the bracer he had on was totally out of place. It was hard to describe his bracer. It was a big blue glass circle that covered the back of the hand. It glowed a deep sea blue, shining and pulsating, as if it were alive. "Do you happen to have a dinghy?" "Mine got crushed by the giant whirlpool." Koby gaped. "What crazy luck." "I have one. Kinda. Follow me." Koby led Luffy deeper into the forest where his masterpiece was. It took him 2 years of hard work and many saved up barrels, but it was worth it. It was his own dinghy. Luffy looked at what appeared to be planks of woods held together by nails. "Huh? What is this? A coffin?" Koby cried weakly. "No, it's my escape boat. It took me 2 years to build." Luffy was straightforward. "It took you 2 years to build an escape boat and you didn't escape yet. I wish I could. Just thinking about Alvida makes my bladder go weak and I want to puke." Koby shouted. "I went fishing one day and got on the wrong ship. Now I'm Alvida's cabin boy." Luffy laughed. "Wow, you are dumb. You must have done something bad in your past life. It's conned you, you know." Koby's sweat dropped. "You mean karma?" Luffy picked his nose. "No, my gramps say if you do something bad, conned you will get you cause life is going to play a trick on you." "So how did you end up floating in a barrel anyway?" Koby questioned. Luffy smiled widely, all his teeth showing. "Yeah, I'm going to be Pirate King. A.A.C.Ac. PP Pirate King." Koby choked out, jaw dropping at the thought of it. Pirate King. Seriously? Seriously? So Luffy-san is a pirate? Ah. You're Nakama. Don't have any yet. Do you sing? Koby stumbled over the sudden question. No. Why? "'Cause I need a musician. Pirates sing and have fun, right? Got to get one." Koby choked at the sight of Luffy's laid-back attitude. Did he seriously think he could become the Pirate King without any crewmates or ship? Koby shook his head in denial. "No way." Luffy frowned. "Why not?" he said. "Because the Pirate King is someone who has everything in the world. Wealth, fame, and power consolidated into one person. Meaning you're after the One Piece in the golden age of piracy. It's Usopp, every pirate in the world is out looking for it." Luffy cut in with a pout. "Well, so am I. It can't be done, you'll die before you find it." Koby mumbled in a low voice. Luffy grabbed both of Koby's shivering shoulders and looked him in the eye. "Koby. A man is not a man without a dream. Even if I die trying, it's better than not following my dream. Everyone has a dream, all you need is the grit, the ambition to realize it. Don't you have a dream?" Koby was awed by Luffy's passionate speech. There was nothing but determination and ambition etched into Luffy's eye. Inside his guts, Koby felt it, he actually believed Luffy could become the Pirate King. Licking his dry lips, he stuttered, I do have a dream." "Louder, Koby. Where's your willpower? Show me some guts and shout it to the world." Luffy encouraged. Koby opened his mouth wide and shouted on the top of his lungs. "I want to be a marine and to uphold justice." Luffy slapped him proudly on the back. There you go, now follow your dream. You took the first step and realized that this is what you want. Koby found a new strength within. I can do it, I'm going to join the marine or die trying, then I'll arrest Alvida and the iron mace smashed down in front of his face, destroying his dinghy, 2 years of hard work. Just who are you going to arrest Koby? Alvida growled. Koby felt his bladder weaken before bringing up the memory of his dream. Almost immediately Koby felt his resolve settle. Luffy being Luffy, pointed at Alvida and asked, who is this tough-looking old biddy? Koby grinned. She's the ugliest and fattest bitch throughout the seas, killer whale Alvida. Luffy burst out laughing, killer whale, that's a good one. Alvida said. I don't care if you're Urano's Zoro or Kami himself, die you little brats. She swung a 100 kg metal mace down with all her might, intending to crush both Luffy and Koby in one blow. Luffy pushed Koby back and grinned. You did a good job Koby, I'll take over now. Koby watched in horror as the mace descended upon them. Luffy was guarding, bending his left hand as if he were guarding his face with an invisible shield. Silence. Popping eyes. Hanging jaws. The mace stopped when it made contact with the back of Luffy's hand. Despite the weight difference and the force behind the blow, Luffy's hand was not pushed back a single centimeter. All they could see was his wide smile, his eyes hidden underneath his straw hat. All of a sudden, he didn't look like a country bumpkin anymore. There was a mysterious aura around the team that sent chills running down their spines. WW what the hell's going on? Luffy grinned. You can't beat me. Why don't you try your own attack for a size? Pushing aside the metal club, Luffy drew his hand back and swung his arm out, intending to backhand Alvida in the face. This was the tricky part. Luffy's Yata no Kagami was tricky to use. Despite its somewhat misleading name, the 8-span mirror was more like a shield. According to the legends, the 8-span mirror was supposed to be capable of reflecting any attack. This is actually dependent upon the user. The first time Luffy used the shield to protect himself from the bullets, the shield mirrored the amount of force being applied to the bullet. What happens in the end is the two equal forces cancel each other out and the bullet drops harmlessly to the ground while the shield received no damage. This time Luffy did something differently. Throughout the years of using his mirror, one trick he developed was to only use the core of the shield. The obsidian black part was somehow retractable and it slid into the blue core. In terms of space, there was no way it could have physically fit. A mystery shield indeed. Luffy was using his second trick now. First he would absorb the force behind the attack and then store it into the core of the shield. When he attacks with the shield, he would have to make contact with the enemy and then release the stored up power. The timing had to be very precise, otherwise the attack would dissipate into thin air. The attack connected beautifully. His backhand release impacted Alvida right in the face, the force of her own blow through her back and sent her flying into the air and over the island before falling into the ocean. Koby gaped in awe, what was this strength that Luffy had? He sent Alvida flying with one blow. For most people who did not know about his shield's ability, most would come to the conclusion that his backhand had sent Alvida flying. By adding his own power, he can amplify the power stored within the shield which resulted in a devastating attack. Boy. Give Koby a dinghy, he's going to join the Marines. Yes sir. They shouted as they hurried off to prepare the boat. The rest of the pirate crew was more than glad to part with their dinghy. Luffy jumped in with an easy smile. Come on Koby, let's go. For the first time in a long while, Koby smiled a true smile and ran after Luffy, who carried the boat over his head as he ran to the shore. Friendship is a beautiful thing. So you're headed for the Grand Line. I hear it's a pirate's graveyard. Koby still lacked confidence, even though it was a major improvement from the past. Just thinking about the Grand Line made him break out into goosebumps. Luffy pointed at Koby, say, that Urano Zoro guy. He's imprisoned at the marine base somewhere. Yeah. Why do you ask? Luffy shrugged. He sounds pretty weak to me if he got caught by the Marines. Koby gasped, no way. He's a demonic beast. Luffy-san, you should stay away from him. He's called the pirate hunter for a reason. They say he wanders the sea and hunt down fugitives. Then he's strong. If he's a good guy, I'll recruit him as my nakama. What? No way Luffy-san. It's a bad idea. Luffy pulled out a dried squid and smacked Koby across the face with it before chewing on it. Calm down. I'm still deciding whether to let him join or not. If he's a good guy I'll let him join. Koby rubbed his face, he's obviously a bad guy if he got arrested. Luffy threw back his head and laughed. Well I'm a pirate, so I'm a bad guy too. Wait. I'm a good guy though. But pirates are bad guys. So I'm a good bad guy. He frowned and massaged his temples. Ugh, my brain hurts from thinking about it. That's it, I'm a mystery guy. Koby let out a nervous chuckle. Luffy will become the pirate king maybe. The lottery fruit, kagu no mi, the sniff fruit. The lottery stopped on an abstract fruit, there was an odd purple smoke coming from the porous purple exterior. 10 years later, Luffy pushed Koby back behind him. Good job Koby, I'll take it over from here. Koby looked in horror as the iron mace tore through Luffy's body. No. Luffy's dismembered pieces swirled with blue smoke before reforming his body. He was grinning. Everyone was shocked, the boy should have been crushed to a pulp, but his body turned to smoke and reformed. Alvida swung at his head, leaving him headless. But it reformed with a frown. Just because I can't die doesn't mean I like it, you know. Alvida growled. You ate the devil fruit, didn't you? Luffy grinned widely. Yup, it's the Kagu no Mi, Loja type. I'm a sniff man. Luffy took a horse stance and clapped both hands together, eyes closed in concentration. Everyone but Alvida ran off, not wanting to see what sort of attack he would come up with. Luffy let out a primal howl. Shockwave, flatulence. There was a hidden flap at the seat of his blue shorts, and it was there for a good reason. The following expulsion of gas would have surely blown a hole in his pants. The vile purple smoke hung heavily in the air. Luffy stood back up and grinned. With my powers, I can create a gas that smells so bad, one sniff would be enough to knock you out. Now take a sniff of this. Tendrils of purple gas twisted almost lifelike as they took up the shape of a purple Luffy, evilly laughing. They streamed towards her and went up her nostrils. Alvida fainted while retching. Luffy frowned. Who knew that one could die by choking on their own vomit after being knocked unconscious? Oh well, he is the sniff man, the one who will be Pirate King. Omik Part 1 End. Sneak preview. Luffy eyed Helmeppo and dashed past the crowd of marines with surprising grace. He snagged the youth by the collar and started running. Hey, where are Zoro's swords? Helmeppo's head was bumping against the floor with each step Luffy took. It's in my room a bit back, we just passed it. Luffy kneed Helmeppo in the crotch. Why didn't you say so sooner? In the room, there were 3 katanas, Luffy didn't know which one it was. Helmeppo wasn't much help seeing that he was sleeping. Well, a knee to the crotch tends to do that. When he glanced out of the window, his blood grew hot and heavy. Koby was lying motionless on the floor, covered in blood while the rest of the marines pointed their rifles at Zoro. It was his turn to act. He crashed through the window and put himself in front of Zoro with his arms open. Tekai. Wow. We actually made it here. Luffy exclaimed as he observed the unique-looking marine towers. Despite the small town, the marine base was quite large. Was it really necessary to have a marine base half the size of the town? Koby tied the boat to the docks. Navigation is one of the basics that everyone should know when they set out for sea. You can't just wander around and hope to reach your destination. Luffy shrugged, floating works just fine for me. Now let's get some grub. He skipped away singing about meat while Koby watched with envy. Crazy lucky people. Wow, that was good. Luffy had somehow packed away quite a lot of food. So we're finally parting ways here, eh? You'll become a marine. Koby teared up a little from happiness. It's all thanks to you, Luffy. Without you, I would still be a cabin boy working under Alvida. You gave me hope and the resolve to follow my dreams. Even though we'll be enemies in the future, whenever you need help, I will do everything in my power to repay you. I promise this. Luffy leaned over and clasped his hands to Koby. You really have grown up, haven't you? Don't forget, a man never goes back on his words. Koby smiled back, yes sir. Hey, you want to head to the marine base together? Sure. I was planning to enlist there anyway, Koby said with a hint of happiness. Luffy was cheerful and easy to hang around with. Yeah, I'm still wondering if they have Zoro locked up over there. Besides, I don't have a crew nor did I commit any crimes yet. They shouldn't try to arrest me. At the entrance of the base, the 2 outposts were empty. The only thing that greeted them was the 12-foot-high wall that enclosed the perimeter. Without hesitation, Luffy jumped up and hung onto the side of the wall. I think I see something that side. This time Koby took a peek over the wall after enlisting the help of a nearby garbage bin and promptly fell flat on his backside. There's no mistaking it. That black bandana and harakimi, it's Rorono's Zoro. Tied to a crudely made cross, Zoro looked quite menacing. There was an air of danger that hung about him. Without a doubt, Zoro is strong. Noting their presence, Zoro looked up at them with a strong gaze. Hey you. Could you please come over and untie me? It's been 9 days and I'm exhausted. Luffy frowned, those ropes look pretty weak to me, I'd break them easy. Maybe a little incentive was needed. I'll repay you by hunting down a fugitive and giving you all the reward money. I'm not lying, I'll keep my words. Before either of them could reply, they were all surprised when a ladder propped up next to them by the wall. A little girl climbed up and put her finger over her lips and shushed them. Koby watched in growing horror as the little girl approached the demonic Zoro who looked down at her neutrally. Hey, what are you doing here? Save her, Luffy. Do it yourself, that lost brat. The little girl smiled, but you must be so hungry, Ani-san. I made some rice balls for you. Zoro snarled. I'm not hungry. Get out of here before I kill you. She stammered, but. The nauseating spoiled brat made his presence known. Now Rorono Zoro, don't you go picking on kids or I'll report to my father about it. The owner of the voice was a garish-looking youth who had a deformed pumpkin haircut on his head. Garish gold chains and necklaces adorned his body. Koby started having doubts about the Marines after all. No Marine should display his wealth like that. The odd-looking fellow, Helmeppo, was as rotten as they came. He spat out and crushed the young girl's rice bowl beneath his feet before ordering his men to throw the girl over the fence. Koby caught the girl, using his own body as a shield to protect the girl. While Koby tried fixing his sprained ankle, Luffy approached the haggard swordsman. Zoro ignored the lanky teen and eyed the flattened dirtball on the floor. "Hey. Pick that up for me." Luffy's eyebrow shot over his hairline, but he picked it up anyway. "It's more dirt than rice now. You still want it?" Zoro growled, "Just shut up and give it to me." Luffy shrugged. He knew hunger made people irrational, but eating dirt was too much, even for him. Zoro gagged and choked down the muddy onigiri the little girl made for him. "It tastes great." Luffy cocked his head. Did he hear wrong? The dirt ball tasted great. He glanced down at the muddy remains. "Tell her I ate every bit of it." Luffy tilted his hat and grinned. Looks like Zoro was a pretty decent guy after all. "I've decided," Luffy said mysteriously. "I want you to join my crew." Zoro perked up. "Crew?" Luffy grinned. "Yup. I'm a pirate. One day, I'll rule over all the seas and be even greater than the Pirate King. Count me out then. I got my own goals and ambition. I just got to stay alive for 30 days, and then they'll release me. I will live through this, I still have my ambition to fulfill." Zoro's determination and resolute will leak through to his words. Luffy was pleased. If Zoro joined his crew, that'd be great. Zoro was already on his way to realizing his haki. On the dark-haired teen's face was a knowing smile as he walked away. "Don't worry, you will definitely realize your ambition, but I can also tell you for sure. You'll join my crew." "Wow, Zoro Nai really ate it." Riku gushed. Luffy grinned. Yeah, he even wanted seconds. Koby, who was applying a bag of ice to his swollen ankle, asked, "So why was he arrested in the first place?" "He's a bounty hunter, but it isn't illegal to hunt or kill fugitives according to the law." Riku pouted in annoyance. "It's because Zoro Nai protected me from Helmeppo's pet wolf. It was going to bite me when Big Bro appeared and cut it up. Helmeppo got mad and locked him up." Koby's gasped, "But that's outrageous. There was no grounds for arresting Zoro like that." Riku smiled sadly. "It's because Lieutenant Morgan is his father and no one dares go against him. Anyone who does is killed." Koby clenched his fist hard. "This isn't the justice I want to uphold. The Marines here are corrupt." Luffy cracked his knuckles. "I'm going to convince the Marines to let him go. Karma always comes back to bitch. Poor Helmeppo." Helmeppo was strutting through town, making the citizens bow before him, when he showed up. He was dressed up in a red button vest, blue knee-length shorts and a straw hat. "What are you doing? Get out of my way or I'll execute you like Kurano Zoro in 3 days' time." The dark-haired stranger shrugged. "I'd like to see you try. You're a fool weakling who rides on his father's coattails. If you want to put me to death, do it. Take my life." His dark eyes showed no fear, no deviation from his iron will. Helmeppo felt the hair on the back of his neck raising. Gut instinct was telling him to make a run for it. "Watch out, you straw hat brat. I'm going to tell my father on you." The teen spread open his arms in an open invitation. "I will break Zoro free. You don't have to find me, I will find you, and when I do, I will teach what happens when you oppress others." Koby looked on and off from the side. The easygoing and naive Luffy he knew was gone, replaced by a serious and charismatic man. Luffy turned to Koby. "Do you want to see justice? If so, come along, I will show you what true justice is." And they departed for the Marine base. Meanwhile, Helmeppo ran to his daddy crying. "Dad, I want you to kill someone." Lieutenant Morgan stood up. "Oh? Why should I take care of your mess? I am the great axe-hand Morgan." He booted Helmeppo across the face. Putting a lit cigar between teeth, he rubbed his iron-plated jaw. "You're a bastard son not worth hitting. If you want to do something, use your own two-hand to make it happen. Keep steel, anything goes as long as you win." He glared at his tearing son. "Now get out of here." Luffy walked up to the restrained Zoro. "You're joining my crew." "No, I'm not going to be a pirate. I have things to do. I don't care what other people think of me. I haven't done anything I regretted in the past, and the same goes for the future." "Well, I want you for my crew. You can use swords, right?" Zoro looked wistfully at the sky. "I do have a katana. It's something I treasure most, second to my life." Luffy finally found an opening. "I'm going to get the katana back for you, but if you want it back, you're going to have to join me." "That's dirty." Luffy waved him off. "I'll be right back." Luffy peered up at the roof of the Marine base where he could hear voices from. "Alright, time to get up there. Beppu." Using the moonwalk technique, Luffy jumped up and jumped again in midair. The technique used a lot of leg strength in order to jump in midair, but he trained enough to ignore the stress on his legs. On the last midair jump, he used too much power and overshot over the roof. Luckily there was a statue where he landed on. The huge stone statue collapsed backwards, breaking in half as it hit the edge of the roof. Whoops. Luffy looked sheepish and bowed in apology. Sorry. Kill him. I'll parade his bleached skull around town for years to come. Captain Morgan was frothing at the mouth. 10 years of hard work and misappropriated funds were gone in a blink of an eye. Luffy eyed Helmeppo and dashed past the crowd of Marines with surprising grace. He snagged the youth by the collar and started running. Hey, where are Zoro's swords? Helmeppo's head was bumping against the floor with each step Luffy took. It's in my room a bit back, we just passed it. Luffy kneed Helmeppo in the crotch. Why didn't you say so sooner? In the room, there were 3 katanas, Luffy didn't know which one it was. Helmeppo wasn't much help seeing that he was sleeping. Well, a knee to the crotch tends to do that. When he glanced out of the window, his blood grew hot and heavy. Koby was lying motionless on the floor, covered in blood while the rest of the Marines pointed their rifles at Zoro. It was his turn to act. He crashed through the window and put himself in front of Zoro with his arms open. Tekai. When using Tekai, the technique hardens the user's muscles to the level of iron in order to nullify damage taken from attacks. In this case, Luffy conditioned his body to the point where bullets would have not pierced his body. He had considered using his shield, but the size of it would not be enough to cover Zoro who was behind him. He burst out laughing. It's no use. Bullets won't work on me. That was the half-truth. Well, the bullets didn't pierce his body, the force behind the bullet left bruises. The jarring force behind the bullets felt like a sledgehammer shot, but he couldn't afford to show weakness. Koby knew Luffy was great, but having a bulletproof body, it was too epic. So he fainted, frothing foam from his mouth. Zoro was shocked. What kind of human are you? Luffy quirked an eyebrow. It's one of the 6 skills of the Rakishiki, Tekai. I can harden my body to the point where it's like iron carapaces. Zoro shook his head in amazement. Never mind, rather than dying here, why don't I just accede to your request and become a pirate? Luffy pumped his arms up in the air. Yes. I have a crewmate now. Which one of these swords are yours? All 3. I use the Santrik, the 3-sword style. Luffy snapped Zoro's rope off and handed him the 3 katana. Let's see how strong you are, Zoro. Zoro put the Wadmichimanji in his mouth and unsheathed his other 2 katanas. No problem, Captain. What happened next was total slaughter. It was 8 versus 1. Zoro blocked 8 swords with his own 3 and disarmed all of them in one sweeping slash. Don't move, or I'll kill you. Luffy noted with some glee that Zoro was already tapping into his haki. Those of weaker will would be freaked out by the danger emanating from Zoro. Since I've resisted the Marines, this will mean I will become an outlaw. But that is fine, I still have my own goals. I'm going to be the world's greatest swordsman. It doesn't matter if my name is clean or not. My name will be known worldwide, but if you do something that ends up in the way of my goal, I will cut your stomach open to say sorry. Luffy grinned at Zoro's proclamation. Don't worry, your name will spread through the 7 seas, and even the heavens will hear of it. I promise you that, and the man never goes back on his words. Lieutenant Morgan dashed forward in a wild rage. He swung his axe arm at Luffy, who dodged. The axe was so sharp, it cut through the metal fence and stone walls. Luffy did a Tekai in midair and took Morgan's chopping slice. He was sure he heard one of his ribs creak in protest, but he quashed the pain. He twisted his body and kicked the forearm which had the axe implanted all the way to the elbow. There was a sickening crack as the bone and wooden stake splintered inside Morgan's arm. Luffy gave the kneeling lieutenant a lightning-fast right hook that unhinged the iron jaw he was so proud of. Lieutenant Morgan collapsed to the floor, but Luffy did not stop his assault. His punches broke ribs, knocked loose teeth, and damaged Morgan's internal organs. Lieutenant Morgan was literally getting beaten to death. Stop right there, you strawwat. Luffy turned to see Helmeppo holding a flintlock pistol to Koby's head. Turning back to Morgan, he bashed the man across the face one more time before turning to Helmeppo. You should have stayed asleep. Luffy growled towards Helmeppo. Every time he got into battle, he always felt a bit more violent. Don't come closer or I'll blow his head off. Koby screwed his eyes shut, prepared for death. Luffy. I don't want to be a burden. I am not afraid of death. Luffy let the wind caress his face as he let out a true grin. I know. He ignored the squawking of the dumb lieutenant's son. Zoro. It was a speed technique that allows the users to move at extremely high speeds in order to avoid attacks, as well as to attack at higher speeds. It was revealed that the principle of this move was to kick off the ground at least 10 times in a blink of an eye. Luffy used the speed to close the distance between him and Helmeppo in a blink of an eye. At the speed he was going at and the force behind his blow, it was a one-hit KO. Go back to sleep, fool. Helmeppo's eyes rolled up to the sky as he grabbed his badly abused crotch and went to sleep. All the men in the vicinity grabbed their kintama in phantom pain. Scary. Even Zoro winced a little. The battle was finally over. Zoro sheathed his swords. We're free. The rest of the Marines jumped in joy seeing that they were finally free. This was the cue for Zoro to collapse. Wow. That was great. I see where Rika got her cooking skills from. I almost starved after not eating for 9 days. Zoro laughed and patted his stomach. Luffy stacked the dishes neatly, which was twice the size of Zoro's stack. How can a scrawny guy like you eat more than me? Luffy shrugged. Using the Rakishiki takes a lot of energy. Zoro took this chance to grill Luffy for info. How did you block bullets and move so fast? Luffy was chewing on his toothpick thinking hard. Well, you would basically train until your body can enter a state of absolute tension. The only drawback is that you can't move a lot while using this skill. Watch this. This is another part of the Rakishiki. The Shigen. It is a close-quarter combat technique in which the user pushes their finger into a certain target at a very high speed, leaving a wound similar to a bullet wound, making guns unnecessary. Luffy walked over to the wall and his hand flashed out in a blur. His index finger was knuckle-deep into the wooden wall. When he pulled out his finger, there was a perfect hole in the wall. Koby and Zoro gaped. If that Shigen hit the liver or any of the internal organs, the opponent was screwed. Luffy dusted off his hands chuckling. I'm not that good at some of the skills yet. I've seen masters put their fingers through iron plates. Luffy propped his hat back on his head. Anyway, Zoro and I are heading to the Grand Line next. If you want, you can join us, Koby. Zoro seemed to agree. I don't mind. Koby was happy that Luffy wanted him to join, but you two taught me to live by my dreams. Sorry Luffy, but I want to be a marine and uphold justice. There was a cough from the doorway. It was the marine captain of the base. Excuse me. We were wondering if you are really pirates. Luffy glanced at Zoro. Well, I just found my first crewmate, so that would make us pirates. Well, we are grateful to you for saving our town. As Marines, we cannot let you stay here any longer. Everything that happened will be reported to the headquarters. Luffy got to his feet and bowed to Rika's mother. Thank you for the excellent food, but we have to go now, our journey awaits us. Zoro stood up and followed suit. Koby dropped on his knees to the floor, pressing his head down in a bow. Luffy. Zoro. Thank you. You two taught me to live by my dreams. Please, let me join the Marines, Captain. Luffy patted the Marine captain on the shoulder. If you want to thank us, let Koby join the Marines. In a quieter voice, he whispered. One day he will go far, maybe even climb to the ranks of an admiral. The captain looked down at Koby. Stand up, seaman, recruit Koby. I'm allowing you to join the Marines, but don't think we don't know about your past. Don't underestimate our Marines' knowledge-gathering ability. Koby leapt to his feet and saluted. Yes, sir. Luffy and Zoro took this chance to set off, their provisions restocked and their dinghy ready to set sail. Luffy. Zoro. Thank you. Remember my words back then. A man keeps his promises. Luffy grinned. No problem. The rest of the Marines appeared behind Koby. Men. Salute. The captain bellowed. It was a fitting farewell to the town savior as they sailed towards their next great adventure. Amik, the lottery fruit, Kagu Kagu no Mi Part 2. Join me. Luffy said in a deadly serious voice. Never. Zoro shot back. Why not? Luffy questioned. Cause I don't want to have a captain who farts all the time. Luffy looked awkwardly to the side and started whistling. No, I don't. Loop. That was my stomach growling. Blew up. Well, I'm really hungry. Zoro had already passed out by the noxious gas, so were the Marines and Koby. One shockwave flatulence and the lit match had taken care of the entire Marine force. Luffy can control different types of gases. In this case, methane gas plus fire equals big explosion. The battle was over in a second and a big ball of roaring flame. Luffy lugged Zoro's unconscious form over his shoulder and went off to the docks. One to calm it down. And thus Zoro joined the crew. Sneak preview. Luffy tried to pry his head loose from the bird mouth with no avail. The straw hat was stuck to the beak and he didn't want the bird to fly off with his hat. The only warning Luffy got was the sound of cannon fire and the sound of a projectile whistling through the air. Out of the corner of his eye he saw a cannonball zooming towards him. He cursed and steeled his muscles. Tekai. The impact and following explosion obliterated the bird that was carrying him and blasted him to earth with bone-crunching impact. Luffy struggled to his knees and coughed in pain. He had only managed to activate a partial Tekai due to the suddenness of the attack. He hacked and spit out blood onto his hands. The cannonball was stronger than most, and the force of the explosion did some internal damage which he was feeling at the moment. Who the fuck shot a cannon at him? Zoro. Why don't you want to learn Tekai? It's dead useful for defense. Luffy was sailing with Zoro after they left Shell Town. Zoro refused to learn Tekai, saying it was useless for him. Of course, Luffy got defensive over his abilities. You can even block cannonballs with it. Zoro smacked Luffy on the head with the sheath of his katana. As a swordsman, I need to be able to move at any given moment. Standing there and stealing your muscles isn't going to do much good. It would be better if I can use Sora instead. I definitely need the speed advantage. Luffy rubbed his chin and pondered. Well, I guess I can teach you Sora first. You're going to have to wait until we reach land though. In return, can you teach me some one-sword style techniques? Zoro was perplexed. Luffy wasn't carrying around a sword, maybe he just wanted to learn how to use one. You have a sword? Luffy only gave him a mysterious smile. Not yet, but soon. A few days later, Okami, I'm so hungry. Both of them were sprawled on the dinghy, while Luffy moaned about his stomach eating him up. They had ran out of provisions after several days of aimless drifting. They looked up at the bird flying overhead and wondered how they could eat it. Hey Zoro, if you throw me up high enough, I can snag that bird and we can eat it. Under normal circumstances, that in itself was a crazy idea, but Zoro was hungry. Couldn't hurt to try, right? Zoro put his hands together and secured Luffy's foot. Ready? 3, 2, 1 heave. With a great burst of energy, Zoro flung Luffy straight up in the air and then stared in disbelief. The bird was the one eating Luffy. The humongous seagull was flying away and Zoro wasted no time rowing after it. 3 stragglers in the water latched onto his oars, making his rowing slow until the bird flew out of sight. The 3 strangers pulled out daggers and ordered him to stop the boat. Zoro took extra care not to hurt their arms while he beat them until they were black and blue. Those 3 fools made him lose sight of Luffy, now they were going to row until they got to land. So why were the 3 of you drifting in the middle of nowhere? The 3 pirates looked embarrassed. Well, we just got back from robbing a merchant boat when we came across this young lady. She was quite a looker. At first she pretended to be starving and then took our boat and treasure. Next thing we knew a storm came and our ship fell apart. Zoro mused for a moment. This girl was able to predict the weather, her navigation skills must be top class. She sounded tricky but would be a good addition to the crew. He'd have to find Luffy and ask him if he wanted this Nami girl to join. Fixing a serious glare at the 3, he ordered them to put some back to their rowing. The 3 started rowing at a breakneck rate and Zoro could see a town coming into sight. To those who seek the ocean of paradise, they must first find their way there. Which is why Nami refused to let go of the map she just stole from Buggy the Clown. His henchmen were chasing her down map and they were gaining on her. She needed a miracle, something to distract them while she ran away. There was a resounding boom and something dropped in between her and her attackers. Luffy tried to pry his head loose from the bird mouth with no avail. The straw hat was stuck to the beak and he didn't want the bird to fly off with his hat. The only warning Luffy got was the sound of cannon fire and the sound of a projectile whistling through the air. Out of the corner of his eye he saw a cannonball zooming towards him. He cursed and steeled his muscles. Tekai. The impact and following explosion obliterated the bird that was carrying him and blasted him to earth with bone-crunching impact. Luffy struggled to his knees and coughed in pain. He had only managed to activate a partial Tekai due to the suddenness of the attack. He hacked and spit out blood onto his hands. The cannonball was stronger than most, and the force of the explosion did some internal damage which he was feeling at the moment. Who the fuck shot a cannon at him? Nami blinked at the slightly smoking figure at the center of the crater. Maybe this was a sign from heaven that he was here to save her. Oh, boss. You're finally here. I've been waiting for you to come save me. I'll leave everything to you. With those parting words, Nami took off. Luffy was still a little bit confused by what the girl said. She wasn't part of his crew, so why was she calling him boss? Maybe she wanted to join his crew. 3 hulking shadows loomed over him. Boss, eh? Luffy in turn glared back. Someone had just shot a cannon at him and he was pissed. Since these 3 idiots volunteered to be punching bags, he wasn't going to complain. He knocked them out with 1 hit each, but he didn't stop there. He punched them until their teeth fell out and they started coughing out blood. He gave them each a savage kick to the ribs before his rage subsided. He always had a bad habit of leaving his opponents on death's door. It was partially due to his rage and his belief that killing was the last resort. Beating them half to death was the next best option. They tend to leave you alone once the fear has been beaten into them. Wow, that was really brutal. The orange hair girl was back and had observed his fight from the safety of one of the nearby roofs. Luffy sighed and adjusted his hat. Well, they were asking for it. I was just shot by a cannon, so I wasn't feeling the best of moods. Who are you anyway? Me? I'm Nami. I steal treasures from pirates. Say, do you want to join up with me? We can make a lot of money together. Luffy ripped away the remainder of his charred vest. Sorry, not interested. Nami's eyes lit up. Say, are those for sale? Luffy scowled. No, they're not. Now shoo. Come on. Let me take a look at them. I haven't seen anything like it before. Nami sighed. Fine, I won't ask you to sell it anymore. So you got separated from the rest of your crew? How many people are there? Luffy nodded. Only 1. He glanced around. Say, is this your house? Nope, it's a random house from one of the villagers. They're living in a shelter outside of town because of the pirate Buggy. Luffy picked his nose. Is he that scary? This pirate called Nami. I'm Nami and the pirate's Buggy. Don't switch the names around. She shouted at him. He only laughed in reply, haha, so you're the thief Nami and you steal from these empty houses. Okay. She slammed her hand on the desk again. I only steal from pirates. She pulled out a map. I'm going to steal 100 million berries and buy a certain village back. With a map of the Grand Line, I can steal from even richer pirates. By any chance do you know how to navigate? Nami looked affronted. Of course. I'm actually the best navigator in East Blue. Luffy whooped and cheered with a banzai pose, that's great. We're also on the way to the Grand Line too. Really? Yeah, why don't you join as the navigator of our pirate crew? Luffy asked with a sincere smile. What? Nami looked angry and shocked. Forget it, I'm not working for a pirate. She spat the word out with vehemence that even Luffy was taken back. Oh, he was silent for several seconds. So you're going to join my crew then? Nami karate chopped him on the head. I just said that I wasn't joining. Unless what? Luffy prompted. Well, if you come with me to see Buggy then I'll consider it. Luffy sprang to his feet. Okay. Where's this pirate Nami? Nami started strangling Luffy with the rope she just brought out. I'm Nami and the pirate is Buggy. You should light the cannon Nami. It's okay. It wasn't okay. How can she kill someone in cold blood? He said he was a pirate but he didn't look or act the part. She knew she had to steal 100 million berries to buy back Kokoyashi village. She couldn't back out now. With Buggy's treasure, she would only need 7 million berries more. Your hands are shaking. You lack the resolve to risk your life for your goals and dreams. You have to realize that in order to succeed, you have to do some things in life that you are not proud of, but the deciding factor is, can you do it? Hiding her tears, she lit the cannon that was loaded with a buggy ball. It was a specialized cannonball that was strong enough to destroy a small town. Nami looked at Luffy, engraving the final moments of his life to memory. After she bought the town back, she'll pray to his dead spirit every day. But oddly enough the young man was smiling. He leaned back, dropping his hat behind him. He smiled at her. I like your resolve. Never stepping back for your dreams. You're definitely going to join my crew. Nami couldn't believe how relaxed Luffy was even in the face of death. Oi Luffy. Are you going to be fine in there? Everyone turned to the source of the noise. It was the Sandbrick user, the nefarious pirate hunter Zoro. Luffy's crewmate is the pirate hunter. How did he convince him to join? Step down Zoro, I'm fine. Let me show you how useful Tekai can be. He looked at the cannon and steeled his resolve and muscles as the buggy ball closed a distance. Tekai Itsugi. Instead of applying a normal Tekai, Luffy was using the Tekai as a counter. This was a higher level move used entirely as a counter instead, where the purpose isn't to absorb damage from the attack, but to transfer the shock of the attack back to the attacker. In this case, he would redirect the shock and the explosion of the buggy ball. The timing would have to be very precise, but Luffy had enough training with his Yata no Kagami to get the timing down. There was a horrific explosion as pieces of the iron cage exploded into shrapnel. Nami gasped at the sight of the explosion, no human could have survived that. Zoro unsheathed his swords. Orders, Captain. The smoke started to clear. The silhouette of a tall lean boy reaching down for his strawhat silenced most of Buggy's crew. The young man just took one of the infamous buggy balls at point-blank range and survived. Luffy propped his hat back in place, the cold look on his face determined. Just take care of the lackeys. I got something to settle with Buggy. He turned to Nami and smiled. Don't sweat over the cannonball thing. I'm fine. Nami collapsed to her knees. Who was this guy? Buggy unsheathed his daggers. I don't care about you strawhat brat. I want to kill the pirate hunter Zoro. If I kill him, I will get even more famous. Zoro got into a battle stance, holding one of his sheathed swords. This is a challenge to me Luffy and I will take it. Luffy frowned but crossed his arms. I'll give you 30 seconds. Then it's my turn. Zoro grinned savagely. Watch closely Luffy, this is one of the moves that I'm working on, you'll learn this too. Itmrikai. Shishi Sunsen. One sword style draw and resheath technique. Lion's Song. The Lion's Song was a quick draw technique, a one-hit kill. It was still in the early stage of experimentation. But Zoro had developed it enough to work on most opponents. The slash would run from hip to shoulder and leave the opponent down. Luffy narrowed his eyes. Zoro. Buggy's a devil fruit user. Remember in the future, expect anything to happen when it comes to fighting a DF user. Zoro's eye widened. There was no blood from the wound. He spun around in time just to get a dagger to the side of his sides. There was a floating hand. Buggy laughed at the shocked expression on their faces. It's no use pirate hunter. The battle is over. I ate the bara no mi, the section fruit. I'm the section man. Luffy stood in front of Zoro, your 30 seconds are over. It's my turn now. Luffy glared at Buggy. Hey you big nose. That was a cheap attack. Buggy snapped and shot his arm at Luffy. Die you brat. No one disses the nose. Luffy caught the blade between his teeth and bit it. To their surprise, even Zoro's, the blade snapped into pieces. Luffy flexed his wrist, adjusting the shield core from the back of his hand to his palm. He pressed his right hand against the glass core and focused. Much to Nami and Zoro's disbelief, the glass portion of the shield seemed to ripple like water before his fingers actually sank into the blue core, followed by the rest of his hand. From the viewpoint of Buggy and his crew, the brat reached into his own hand. Luffy smiled darkly. For devil fruit users such as yourself, this is the perfect weapon to use. He pulled out from the core of his shield a short sword. It was a most curious sword, having no guard and only 3 notches long from the handle. The entire sword was one piece of grayish-blue metal. This is the cloud-gathering sword of heaven. Buggy laughed at him. Swords don't work on me, and that short sword of yours can't even be called a proper sword. Luffy sighed, it's not in its final form yet. This is the 10-notch sword, I only unlocked 3 notches, I'm still lacking in my training, but this should be enough to defeat you. Luffy put the sword to his side and got into a familiar stance. Itmrik I. No way, he couldn't have learned it so quickly. Zoro said. Shishi Sunsen. One sword style draw and resheath technique. Lion's Song. It was a pale imitation of what the true technique could have done, but it served its purpose. The attack ran from hip to shoulder as a shallow cut due to the shortness of the blade, but there was one big difference compared to Zoro's. Buggy was on the ground bleeding from the wound and screaming in pain. It had been over 20 years since he received a cut of some sort. Somehow the brat had negated his devil fruit powers. Buggy screamed to his men, get me out of here. Now. The rest of the crew obeyed without question. Someone had cut their captain who had the devil fruit ability to be immune to cuts. They were not going to stay and test the blade themselves. Luffy let them flee, they were of no threat to him, and Zoro was injured. Zoro looked at the blade that Luffy was holding, it was emanating an odd sword sort of presence to his senses. He didn't know where Luffy got the sword from, but it was no ordinary sword. He staggered over, can I take a look at it? Luffy seemed to hesitate but finally gave in. It probably won't like you but give it a try. Zoro gripped the handle of the sword and immediately fell to his knees. There was an odd pressure forcing itself on him, making him want to fall into the darkness to escape the onslaught of overbearing dominance. This sword could not be tamed. He flung the short sword aside and gasped, shaking on all 4. Just by holding the sword was almost enough to make him lose consciousness. Luffy picked it up and shoved it back into the blue core on his palm where it disappeared. Wow, not bad, most people would not have been able to even hold it for more than a second. Zoro struggled to his feet. Why can you use the sword like that? It's alive or something. What was with that pressure? Luffy held up his hand where the blue core resided, it's one of the weapons my devil fruit gave me. The black obsidian core slid out mechanically forming a full octagonal shield. The Yada no Kagami and the Ama no Murakumo no Tsurugi. But I saw you swim before. I thought devil fruit users couldn't swim. Luffy shrugged. I don't know why myself. I ate the lottery fruit and got a random fruit ability. Hell, I don't even know what fruit it was I got. Zoro nodded to Nami, who is she? Luffy grinned. That's Nami, our navigator. Nami karate chopped his head. I never said I was joining you crew. Nami ran to the back of the tavern and came back with 2 big sacks of gold and treasures. Score. Now I have the map of the Grand Line and 10 million berries. Luffy laughed and threw up his arms, we have our navigator and the map. Let's head off to the Grand Line. Hey you guys, it was the villagers who were driven out by Buggy. What happened here? Luffy grinned. I beat up Buggy and he ran away. The villagers cheered and word spread quickly. Luffy celebrated with them and they parted on good terms with the town. Later when the Marines came to investigate, they were surprised to find out someone had beaten Buggy. The one who did it? Straw at Luffy. Amik, the lottery fruit, Kagu no Mi Part 3. Hey you big nose. That was a cheap shot. Buggy screamed in rage, no one disses the nose. He shot his arm at Luffy with a dagger, ready to skewer the impudent youth. The dagger shot through Luffy's forehead, leaving a hole in the middle of his head which reformed with blue smoke. Ah, scary. A section man, what a monster. Nami screamed at him. Well you're a gas man. Luffy focused on his hand. Vacuum palm. It was a technique that creates a vacuum in his palm by concentrating air with 5% oxygen content there. By forcing his opponents to breathe in the 5% oxygen gas, it would force the victim to be instantly knocked out, going into a comatose state. Blackout palm. He grabbed Buggy's face, and Buggy fell to the ground unnaturally. It was like he lost consciousness on his feet and collapsed to the floor in a boneless heap. Don't mess with the sniff man, straw at Luffy. I will be the pirate king. Fart. I'm hungry, that was my stomach. Bloop. Yeah I farted, sorry guys. Nami was running away with Luffy chasing her, trying to convince her to join the crew. Want to calm it down, navigator? Maybe. Money, I can't get enough of it. Nami exclaimed, taking a deep sniff of the wad of cash in her hands. Zoro ducked his head trying hard not to laugh after he recalled what happened late last night. Luffy being the honest fellow he was, decided to tell Nami what happened. Ah. That's money? I thought it was toilet paper and I wiped my ass with it. Nami looked down in horror and indeed saw dried brown stains on the wad of cash. Torn between revulsion and greed, Nami could not decide whether to throw the money overboard or to keep it. You bastard. Luffy looked up at Zoro with swollen eyes and bruised lips. SS save, me. Nami was proceeding to shove her staff up Luffy's ass when they saw the island. Wow. There really is an island here. Luffy said, absent-mindedly warding off Nami's attempt to skewer him like a shish kebab. Nami huffed in annoyance, of course there is an island, you dope. It's a small village called Syrup Town. Here we can probably get a bigger ship. Luffy's eyes gleamed. And meat. Zoro joined in, let's not forget the grog. Their joyous mood did not last long. Luffy narrowed his eyes when he heard the telltale sign of a bullet flying through the air. Using the back of his hand, he deflected the lead projectile that was aimed for the back of his head without looking. Zoro unsheathed his sword and deflected another lead projectile that was aimed towards him this time. Nami smartly took cover on the floor of her boat. I am Captain Usopp, protector of this town. Behind me is a force of 80 men. If you do not wish to die, turn your ships back now, pirates. A voice shouted out from the slope in front of them. Luffy was wary, if all 80 men fired, their boat would turn into Swiss cheese. Nami kicked Luffy harshly in the shin. If I lose my money because of this, I wish you luck finding your way to the Grand Line. Zoro scanned the slope. I don't see 80 men, he might be bluffing. Luffy frowned. He might be lying, but let's be safe than sorry. I'm sure there's another place where we can anchor. Aye, Captain. After anchoring at another slope at the side of the village and securing the treasure, they made their way to the village tavern. Finding another place to anchor was a pain. The island was surrounded by steep cliff walls, and by the time they found another entrance, it was already dusk. Making small talk, Nami grilled the innkeeper for info. So who's this Usopp I hear about? Is he some sort of village guard? The innkeeper scoffed, that boy is nothing but a liar and troublemaker. Don't mind anything he tells you. Nami's eyebrow twitched while Zoro's cup of sake cracked in his hand and Luffy bit through a steak bone in anger. They had been tricked. They spent the better half of the day looking for another entrance just because some brat lied to them. There was something that was bothering Luffy for a while now. Earlier when they were shot at, he didn't hear any gunfire. This really made him wonder about what sort of fellow this Usopp is. I want to meet this Usopp guy. If he's cool, I want him to join my crew. Nami smacked Luffy over the head. No way. We don't need a liar like that on board. Luffy coughed out the fish bones that Nami nearly made him swallow and glared at her a bit. Didn't you notice how there was no sound of gunfire while he shot at us? Also, he hit us from so far away. If anything, he would make a great sharpshooter. Zoro downed his sake and slammed it onto the table. Luffy's right. There's no harm in checking out this Usopp guy. Luffy's a pretty good judge of character and it's up to him to decide who joins the crew. Nami fumed a bit. Fine, I'm only here to find treasure anyway. If he doesn't get in my way, whatever then. Luffy grinned, the tension vanishing. Great, it's settled then, let's find Usopp tomorrow. Usopp's frame shivered. He was so close, just a few more and he would be done. 48. The tip of his nose touched the floor, bending slightly from the pressure. 49. His arms trembled as he balanced his weight and pushed up. 50. He finally completed 50 push-ups. Boy, you're weak. Only 50. A disappointed voice cut in from the side. Usopp rolled to his feet and had his slingshot drawn back, a lead star loaded. Show yourself. Leaning against the tree was a dark-haired youth. The scruffy straw hat hid the stranger's eyes, but showed the scar that ran beneath it. He looked like a hillbilly tourist with a red vest and blue shorts. There was a wide grin on his face. Nice to meet you, Usopp, son of the pirate Yasopp. The slingshot lowered. Why you can't know my father? Luffy was cuffing Usopp on the back, laughing as if they were lifelong friends. They were currently trading stories about Yasopp, some sort of sharpshooter, if Nami surmised correctly. And then he shot a whisker off a mouse from 100 meters. Usopp laughed, yeah, he showed me too once. I was so surprised when he came back to Syrup Village with Shanks. It was just in time for him to see Mother off, but he came back. He even taught me a few tricks about shooting and gave me some cool things. Luffy laughed. No wonder your shooting skills are so good. You were taught by the best. Usopp looked out to the sea wistfully. I always admired him, being able to sail off to the unknown, risking his life for adventure. A brave warrior of the sea. I want to be like him too, but I need to be strong. He looked at his bicep and tried flexing it. But no matter what I'm doing, I'm just not getting any stronger. Luffy shrugged. Some people just aren't meant for physical power. You seem to be good at shooting, work with it from there. It's your specialized skill. So what are you here for, Luffy? Luffy scratched his chin. Well, I need a bigger ship and it would be great if you could join my crew. Usopp's smile was happy but a bit restrained. Thanks a lot, but there's something I have to protect here. I might be able to help you out with the ship though. Really? Hey Kaya. These guys heard of my great reputation and traveled far to see me. They are the new members of the Usopp pirate crew. Luffy laughed and punched Usopp in the face. Don't be silly, you're the one who is going to join my crew. He bowed politely. Hello. My name is Luffy and can you lend us a big ship? I'll give it back to you after we sail around the world with it. Kaya giggled, your new friend is funny Usopp. Nami stepped forward, is there any way we can get a decent sized ship around here? Kaya thought for a moment, well, what's going on? It was the butler who had his hair slicked back and rimless glasses on his face. Just who are all these ruffians Oju-sama? Plahater. Leave the premise at once you pirates, you two trash of the seas, are you going to follow your father's footsteps and become a murderer? The butler mocked. He sneered down at Usopp who was trembling in rage. Like a coiled rattlesnake, Usopp struck. Usu up you inch. Shut the hell up you bastard butler, my father is a brave warrior of the sea. The strength training paid off, the force of the punch had shattered Clahater's lens, pushing sharp shards of broken glass into the right eye. Kaya gasped at the blood and the horrific sight of the ruined eye. Leave now Usopp. I never want to see you again. Usopp looked pleadingly at Kaya, but she pointed him to the exit, tears streaming from her eyes. Silently, he left. Luffy patted Usopp on the back, you did the right thing and defended your honor. I'm sure she'll understand. Usopp tightened his bandana and forced a smile, yeah, I'm sure she would. Plahater looked at the bandages covering his eye and snarled. He couldn't believe that he was half blinded now at the hands of some upstart teen. He grit his teeth and snarled. He was originally planning to force Kaya to sign her inheritance over to him so he could live off her wealth peacefully, but the plan changed now. His blood was boiling for blood, death, and revenge. The anger inside him won't be sated until everyone in the village was dead. It was time to contact the Black Cat pirates to raze the village to the ground. Luffy and the others woke up to the sound of screaming and the smell of smoke. This familiar scent, the sound of screaming and burning wood. It was a pirate attack. He barged out of his room, Zoro was a step behind him alert and waiting. Nami also wandered in, wearing an indecent nightgown, blinking sleepily. Luffy quickly appraised the situation and gave several orders. Zoro, look after Nami and get rid of any pirates you can see. I'll take care of the rest. Meet up with me at Kaya's house. There was no indecision behind his words, it was an order. Zoro rarely saw Luffy acting like this, there was a hard cold look in his eyes. The easygoing Luffy was gone, and in its place was someone of authority and power. He nodded and took Nami with him, dashing through the woods to Kaya's house. Unfortunately, Luffy forgot about Zoro's habit of getting lost. Luffy concentrated and released the air in his lungs. He felt the hidden bond, tying the shield to his existence. Within the shield, the boundless force of the ocean raged. And within that dark crushing pressure was the cloud-gathering sword. His hand pressed against the glass core and into it, reaching down into the dark depths. He pulled out the blade and flourished it, his Yata no Kagami taking its original form with a black obsidian. It was time to battle. Luffy focused on the screams and disappeared in a burst of speed. He reappeared behind a pirate who was ready to kill a young girl. Die. Luffy decapitated the pirate and went to the next one. The young girl was prepared for death when the pirate in front of her was deprived of his head. Standing in front of her was her savior. He had an old-looking chipped sword with a octagonal shield and reminded her of the warriors of the olden days. The only feature she could catch before he disappeared was the frayed straw hat he had on. Meanwhile Nami was busy smacking Zoro over the head every time he tried to wander off in some random direction. Goddamn it, how hard is it to run after me in a straight line? It's not my fault your directions are so horrible. Zoro shot back. Nami deadpanned. This is coming from the guy who turned 180 degrees and almost ran back to where we started. Zoro was about to deny the claims, but he pulled Nami to a sudden stop, causing her to yelp in indignation. Hey. What's the buy? Catapult. In the darkness of the night, something big and heavy crashed in front of them where Nami would have been a second earlier. A round muscular pirate decked out in a cape and cat hat was at the point of impact, the floor beneath his foot was shattered and cracked. What a strong blow. Zoro thought as he untied his bandana from his arm. It looked like he was going to have to be serious here. Nami noticed a blur slinking stealthily behind Zoro. Behind you. Zoro instinctively reacted and stamped on the ground 3 times in rapid succession, propelling himself up and over. Flipping around in midair, he saw that a slim and tall fellow with cat claws had crept up behind him. Thankfully, he practiced Sora a bit. Well, it wasn't good enough for his movements to disappear, it was enough to be useful. Nah, he found out Bucci. The tall and skinny squeer said. I almost crushed the girl's head too, Sham, that swordsman has fast reactions. The fat one stated. Zoro unsheathed all 3 swords, those 2 were no flunkies. He dashed forward, blades flashing through the moonlight. Onigiri. Zoro's demon slash bit through Sham's midriff and Bucci's chest. He kicked off the ground and jumped backwards in time to avoid 2 swipes. His judgment had been correct. Ever since his fight with Buggy, Zoro made it a habit to notice the smallest details. The cut on Sham had no substance behind it, and Bucci was protected by too much fat and muscle for the blade to reach the vitals. He turned around and warded off their attempts to claw his eyes out and rip his entrails open. One of them was fast, the other was slow, but landing heavy blows. Together their teamwork was phenomenal. Most people would overwhelmed by the fast and powerful combination, but Zoro was no pushover either. He had no time to waste, he was already supposed to be at Kaya's house already. Luffy sent him ahead for some reason, and he wasn't going to disappoint. He sheathed his Wad Michimanji and the other two in a blink of an eye and used Zoro to backstep. Ever since training with Zoro, there was a new move he wanted to try. He had the speed down, but the power aspect still needed work. What he was about to do was risky. He moved one of his sword to the other side and knelt low. Incorporating the basic Zoro he learned and his natural strength, he unleashed his most powerful dual sword attack in a blink of an eye. Nitenrik Rashomon, two-sword style draw and resheath technique. Castle Gate. Zoro drew his sword and resheathed them quickly after unleashing his attack. He reappeared behind them with both swords sheathed and knees in a kneeling position. It was a dual lion's song but in a diagonal cross cut. The attack held true, the two cat brothers fell into 4 bloody pieces to the floor. The 2 swords that he just sheathed were shattered. His cut was too unrefined to cut through bone properly. As a result, his blade paid the price and broke into pieces. Using an incomplete technique was too much for Zoro to handle. He was sure he had torn some muscles in his legs, and the rapid quick draw damaged his shoulder muscles. Ignoring the pain, he stood up and looked at Nami. "Let's go." Luffy felt his blood sing as he decapitated yet another pirate. The 50 pirates that invaded the town were now reduced to a mere 20. They had finally noticed his presence after he killed about 10 of their men. The fire and blood brought back painful memories, but Luffy suppressed them and fought on. The most dangerous part about fighting is not about the enemy's battle power, it's their overall fighting force. The reason why the Marines are such a threat is due to the fact that they possess a vast fighting force numbering in the thousands. Everything has to be taken into account. From the number of men to the number of weapons the enemies have available. For Luffy, fighting 20 opponents at once was no easy task. He was facing cutthroat pirates, no trick is too dirty for them. This includes taking hostages. Luffy took care of those scumbags first. Using Zoro, he attacked the kidnappers holding hostages. He aimed for their knee, arm, and head. A missing limb is a pretty good distraction for releasing a hostage. While retreat was a viable option, Luffy could not abandon the innocent villagers. To fight properly, Luffy entered gladiator mode. This was when he battled a war of attrition. Using his shield, Luffy defended himself from each attack and cut down the opposing enemy using his sword. He slowly marched his way forward, taking on one opponent at a time. His opponents died with a shocked look on their face after their swords and stone hammer maces failed to even scratch the shield he was using. Also, their swords and weapons were useless before his own. His sword cut through their iron katana like a hot knife through butter. After 10 more kills, the rest of the pirates threw down their weapon and begged for their lives. "Please, spare our lives. We're sorry. We promise that we will never kill anyone ever again. Please save us." Luffy's arms and body were cloaked with blood, the flickering fire showed the shadows on his face, as well as his intense glare. "What do you want me to do? Chop off a leg or chop off an arm? That's the only way I can believe that you will never fight and kill again. If I find out you did continue your evil ways, I will cut off your other 3 limbs." His voice was cold and dark, and from the shadows of his straw hat, the pirates could see the steely resolve in his eyes. The pirates were speechless. The young man in front of them was ruthless, but that cruelty and anger formed into a sharpened blade, one that was pointed towards the pirate at the moment. "If you don't make up your mind, I'll just go with the simple option and chop off your head." There was no compromise behind his words, only the promise of the pain to come. One brave man crawled forward and held out his left arm. The tears were steaming down his face, mixing with the snot. "Take my left arm." Luffy's blade flashed and the arm fell to the ground. The man let out a broken howl and collapsed from the pain. Next, Luffy made sure each of them learned their lesson and paid the price for it with their flesh. After ensuring the safety of the villagers, he set off to Kaya's mansion. In the darkness of the night, he could already see the fire in the distance. Just exactly what had happened while he was cleaning up the mess. Usopp raged and screamed beneath Kuro's foot at the mansion where everything was set ablaze, and Kaya was still inside. Kuro bent down and showed Usopp a document. "You see this? This will transfer all of Kaya's property and liquid property over to me. Once they investigate and find out about her death, her last will takes effect, transferring all her funds to the loyal butler who came back from vacation." Next to Usopp was the bloody body of Django, the hypnotist Kuro used to force Kaya to sign the will. There was hate in Usopp's eyes. "You will never get away with this." Kuro ripped off his eye patch and showed him the missing eye. And who is going to stop me? I still have to pay you back for this. I'm going to repay the favor. Kuro's katana claw was prepared to gouge out Usopp's eye, but raised his claw up in time to deflect a heavy blow from Zoro, who was using only his Wad Michimanji. I'll stop you here. Zoro grunted. Kuro vanished and reappeared behind Zoro. Fast. It's almost as fast as Luffy with Zoro. He ducked down to dodge the swipe from the claws, but fell prey to the kick that connected with his midriff. Kuro's abnormal leg strength sent Zoro flying through the wall of the burning house. His vision swam as he coughed out blood. If this was what Luffy's kick felt like, he never wanted to get hit by Luffy. Usopp had already taken the chance to run into the house to save Kaya, while Kuro was occupied with Zoro. Nami was watching the scene from the cover of the trees. She had to do something. A hand clasped her shoulder, almost eliciting a shriek from her. It was Luffy, but different than the one she normally associated with. This Luffy was dye red in the enemy's blood, and he commanded absolute authority. I'll take care of Kuro, find a way to get the others out of the house. Nami dashed off to find a safe way in and out, while Luffy approached Kuro. Kuro looked at Luffy. More trash that needs to be swept up. Look here, I'm busy, so if you get out of the way, I won't kill you. Luffy retracted the shield and sealed the sword. He needed the speed advantage here. You might not have business with me, but I have business with you. Oh, and what might that be? Luffy gave him a cocky grin. You hurt my friend, so I'm going to pay you back 100-fold. Can you do that? Kuro whispered from behind Luffy. Yes, I can. Luffy said from behind Kuro. Kuro cursed inwardly. The boy was as fast as he was. Stealth foot. This technique allowed Kuro to move at superhuman speed, but the speed was too much for Kuro to take, and he couldn't make out anything. Whatever he came across, he slashed indiscriminately. Slashes ran across the side of the house and trees. Luffy stood and took the slashes with Tech-Eye. Even then, his Tech-Eye was not refined enough to take on Kuro's blade. His Tech-Eye worked great for blunt trauma impact, but as far as stopping swords, Luffy still needed more work. Why aren't you fighting back? Am I too fast for you? Kuro taunted. Luffy had his arms crossed defensively and maintained his Tech-Eye. No. I don't have to do anything. You will fall here and fade in history like you've always wanted. Within the house, Usopp found Kaya coughing from underneath her bed. With her frail body, there's no way she could inhale any more smoke. Zoro had the other butler on his back. His condition wasn't very good either. Usopp's mind was racing through what he remembered about the layout of the area. There should be a wine cellar in the lower level. It was built so that even if a fire started on the first level, there would be no way for it to burn down into the cellar where the wine was. He threw a wet blanket over Kaya and picked her up bridal style. To the cellar. We can get out from there. Glancing out of the window, he froze. Kuro was flickering in and out of view, while slashes rained down upon Luffy's still form. What would happen even if they got out of the house? That doesn't mean Kaya would be safe from Kuro. In fact, that would only give Kuro more incentive to kill her. He handed Zoro Kaya and faced the window. You go ahead first, there's something I must settle. Zoro grabbed him and shook him. Don't be foolish. This house will burn down within minutes. Usopp broke free. As a man, there are some things that I have to do, and this is one of them. There was no doubt behind his words, and Zoro knew he couldn't stop him. Zoro turned and left Usopp there. After making sure that Kaya was on her way to safety, Usopp pulled out his trusty slingshot and the lead star. Under normal circumstances, a clear shot would be hard for anyone to pull off. But Usopp was disadvantaged by the blinding smoke and the wavering heat which obstructed his vision and depth perception. Also, his target was moving at an unfathomable speed, almost 100 meters force. His eyes could barely see the flickering form, but deep within, he found himself looking with his mind's eye. Ignoring the feeling of the flames, he focused his sixth sense. The one that was most important to any sharpshooter. For the first time in his life, Usopp realized just how strong Luffy actually was. In the past, when he tried to utilize mantra, he thought he was doing it incorrectly. He could not sense the drive or ambitions of his fellow villagers. But Luffy was the sun, bright and overwhelming. It was astounding the amount of presence he had. Ignoring Luffy, he felt around for Kuro's presence. It was flickering in and out, almost non-existent when next to Luffy, but he sensed it. His concentration was being broken by the smothering smoke and hazy heat, but he never stopped focusing on Kuro's flickering presence. Drawing the special rubber band back to its full elasticity, Usopp aimed at an empty spot where he knew Kuro was going to be. The Satsu Namari Bashi. Sure kill lead star. Usopp's shot whistled through the air to the point where Kuro was running 100 meters force and ran through Kuro's remaining eye. Arg. Kuro screamed in agony and clutched his left eye where the pellet had gone in. Jumping from above, Usopp descended like a swooping hawk after a wounded prey. Usopp smashing hammer. Usopp smashed the full force of his weight and anger onto the back on Kuro's head. Even after Kuro slumped to the floor, facing the night sky, Usopp continued his assault. Usopp hammer. Usopp hammer. Usopp hammer. Usopp's hand caught his wrist mid-swing. It was Luffy with a serious look on his face. He's already dead. Indeed, Kuro had died, most likely from the first hit to the back of the head from above. The back of the skull was caved in unnaturally. The adrenaline wore off and Usopp hurled over the dead Kuro's face. It was his first kill. First kills are always hard, but that means there will be a second one, a third. Did you kill him for fun? Did you feel any bit of remorse? The action makes the man, the regret breaks a man. So do not doubt, for that is strength. Usopp's back was facing the flame, casting a dark shadow across his face. He stood up and faced Luffy. While Luffy could not see his expression, Usopp was standing with his back straight and proud. Let's see if the villagers are okay. We're going to meet up with Nami and the others. After that, we're going to get a ship and sail to the Grand Line. We? Luffy shot Usopp a devilish smile. Of course it's us. We're Nakama, aren't we? There had been no prouder moment in his life. Tears streamed freely from his eyes, and he shouted after Luffy. Yes, Captain. And thus Luffy gained another Nakama, his sharpshooter. Amek, the lottery fruit, Kagu no Mi Part 4. Nami couldn't help but curl up in a ball, laughing her guts out. Ha 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 ha, Luffy. This is too much. I'm going to pee my pants. Luffy was showing one of his more party-type gases he could create. This laughing gas is great at parties, they laugh at everything you do even if it's stupid, this way everyone is happy. He said cheerfully. That's a stupid trick. Nami gasped out. The effect of the gas was finally wearing off. That's never going to work in a fight. She challenged. The pinkish cloud of gas hung heavily over the Black Cat pirates, who were currently laughing their asses off. Zoro and Nami had their gas mask on already. They soon learned that it was vital for their health to wear a gas mask 24/7. Luffy would sometimes spontaneously release some random gas. After binding their laughing forms, Luffy turned them merrily over to the town who called the Marines. Nami slapped down a 1,000-berry note on Zoro's hand and grumbled. She hated losing money. Luffy turned to Usopp energetically. Why don't you join my crew? You can be our sharpshooter. Usopp edged away slowly. Thanks, but I got the I will die if I leave this town disease. No, you are joining my crew. A few blasts of gas later, Usopp stumbled light-headed after Luffy. The anesthesia had relaxed Usopp and made him susceptible to persuasion. He had a great sharpshooter now. Usopp stumbled into a tree and giggled. A bit drugged up, but beggars can't be choosers. Sneak preview. Nami smiled coyly at the assistant chef Sanji. I'm wondering if I can have an order of everything on the menu. Everything seems so tasty here. Sanji had hearts in his eyes. Of course, my dear, I'll be right back with your food. Meanwhile, enjoy this fruit in Macedonia, along with Grand Main wine. Nami fluttered her lashes at Sanji. Wah, that's so gallant of you, but the food here is a bit pricey. No problem, it's on the house. Sanji said, whistling. Man, what a slag. Usopp chuckled. Sanji's expression darkened and he turned to Usopp menacingly. What did you just say? Usopp did what he did best, he lied through his teeth with a straight face and without blinking. Oh, I just said that man over there is a fag. Usopp pointed to Paddy to prove a point. Sanji smirked. Yeah, that idiot is kind of a fag. Usopp snickered. Lying was really fun. After several particularly harsh beatings when he was young, Usopp learned that telling a believable lie was better than telling an outrageous one. It actually served a purpose by misleading other people with plausible and possibly true information. The food came and everyone started eating. Normally, Luffy would go wild by stuffing everything he saw on the plate in his mouth. Surprisingly, he took his time to slowly sample each dish. The rest of the gang looked at Luffy weirdly. Is there something wrong with the food? Yeah, it's too good. What is a cook of his level doing here? Luffy pondered seriously. Noting their confused looks, he elaborated a bit more. You know the saying we are what we eat, some cooks have applied that idea into their cooking. Their goal is to support the body by making dishes that build a strong body. Over the course of time, the muscles, bones, and 5 senses will be enhanced. At master level, their cooking can even promote longevity. Wow, that's amazing. I never knew that was possible. Nami said in amazement. Her respect for Sanji had risen a notch. Yeah, most of them would be on the Grand Line or cooking for the rich royalty. I want him for my crew. Luffy declared. Zoro glanced at Sanji, who was shamelessly flirting with the other female patrons. Do you really think he'll join us? He looks happy living his life here. Luffy resumed his eating with gusto and shrugged. If he is fated to join, then he'll eventually join our crew. It's destiny. Just as he spoke those words, a dark shadow fell over the ship. Patrons panicked and ran to the window. What happened? On Krieg. It's Pirate Armada Krieg's galleon. The screaming patron shouted. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support the EVELSAINT93 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.